Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We all want that financial peace, that feeling of security with our money, right? And get this, if you're in Belgium and you're working a typical full-time job, you've probably already made like over €1 million in your working life.
Crazy.
Crazy, right? So then why aren't we all sailing around on yachts? Well, that's what we're going to unpack today.
It's a question a lot of us are asking, and this author, Sarah Zweynepal, really digs into this in her book. It's called Iedereen Millionaire.
Which translates to...
Everyone a millionaire.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't speak Belgian,
Oh,
right?
And I love that because we're not talking about like some get-rich-quick scheme. Zweynepal's all about building a healthy, sustainable relationship with money over the long term.
Yeah, exactly. It's less about like winning the lottery and more about like changing how we think about money every single day. She calls this your money mindset. Like how you view money actually drives all those financial decisions you make.
Okay, so then how do we actually like put this money mindset idea into practice? I mean, Zweynepal lays out three main ideas, right? And the first one is just to make sure more money comes in than goes out. I mean, seems kind of obvious, but...
Well, sure, it sounds simple, but in reality, not so much. We're going to dive into some more practical stuff about managing money later on, but honestly, this mindset thing, it's super important. Like, it's the foundation.
Totally. I mean, if you're stuck thinking you'll never afford a vacation, you're probably not even going to try to budget for one, right?
Right. You got to believe it to see it. And that kind of leads us to Zweynepal's second big idea. Think about your life goals. Like, what do you actually want to do with your life? And then make your money choices work with those goals. Make them match.
It's about making sure those things line up your spending and what actually matters to you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, let's say your big dream is to travel the world, right? Maybe those daily takeout coffees might need a second thought.
Ugh, it's crazy how those little expenses add up so fast. Okay, so more money in than out, aligning your spending with your goals. What's that third principle that Zweynepal talks about?
This one's all about action. Don't just sit back and accept a financial situation that's making you unhappy. Like, you have the power to actually change it.
Easier said than done, though, sometimes, right?
For sure. It takes work. She makes a really good comparison, though, about managing money. She says it's a lot like dieting.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, they both need discipline. They both need consistency. And they both need you to step outside your comfort zone. Like maybe that daily latte, it's comfy, it's enjoyable, but financially, maybe it's your comfort zone and it's actually holding you back.
Okay, that one hit a little close to home. So what about some of these, like, hidden beliefs, the ones we have about money that could be messing us up without us even realizing it? Zweynepal uses this term, limiting beliefs. What are those?
Yes. Limiting beliefs. These are those sneaky thoughts that can make us feel like we don't deserve wealth or that there's just not enough money out there, period. It's like imagine believing deep down that you're just not meant to earn a good income,
I can see how that would become a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Totally. You believe it, so you might act in a way that reinforces that belief, like maybe you don't ask for that raise or you undervalue your skills. And that unfortunately can lead to staying stuck in those lower paying jobs or, even worse, self-sabotaging opportunities because deep down, you don't think you're worthy.
It's amazing how much our thoughts can shape our reality, right?
For sure. And another one of those super common limiting beliefs is that whole scarcity mindset. Like there's only a limited amount of money out there. And if someone else gets some, that means less for you.
Ah, I see. So how do we break free from these limiting beliefs? It's almost like we have to rewire our brains for financial success.
Absolutely. It takes effort. You have to really be deliberate about it. Zweynepal suggests this method of using money affirmations or like these positive statements that you say to yourself that kind of help combat those negative limiting beliefs.
So like instead of thinking, ugh, I'll never be able to buy a house, it'd be more like...
Exactly. You'd say something like, you know what? I am worthy of owning my dream home and I'm attracting the abundance and financial security to make it happen. The idea is the more you repeat these affirmations, the more your brain starts to actually believe them, and that can lead to real change.
So it's about training your mind to see money as a positive force in your life, not something to be afraid of.
Exactly. And when you can start shifting that thinking from scarcity to abundance, from not enough to more than enough, that's when you start to see new possibilities open up. You start making decisions from this place of empowerment instead of fear.
That's such a powerful shift. Speaking of different money mindsets, Zweynepal talks about these two sisters. One's a big spender and the other's a super saver. It's a great example of how these mindsets, scarcity versus abundance, can play out in everyday life.
Totally. And what's fascinating is how even small, everyday choices, like deciding whether or not to treat a friend to dinner when you're on a budget, can actually reveal your underlying money mindset.
It's that fear, right? Like missing out if you don't spend or feeling like you have to spend to impress people. That can really drive those scarcity-based decisions.
Oh, absolutely. And all those worries and anxieties that come with a scarcity mindset, they can actually spill over into other parts of your life too. It's not just about your wallet, you know?
I can totally see that. Being worried about money all the time,
Mm.
that could easily lead to problems in relationships, maybe missing out on opportunities because you're too scared to take a risk.
Yeah.
Even your health could be affected, right? All that stress.
It really is a vicious cycle. But here's the thing. Contrast that with an abundance mindset. And this doesn't mean just spending recklessly, okay? It's about having this underlying trust that there are enough resources out there, enough to go around. It's about believing in growth and prosperity, both for yourself and for others.
So instead of guarding what you have so tightly, you're more open to possibilities. You're excited to share what you have, whether that's money, time, or even just your skills and knowledge.
Yes, exactly. It's like having this generosity of spirit, and that can lead to stronger relationships, more fulfilling work, and just an overall greater sense of well-being.
Okay, so this makes me think of that classic question, right?
Yeah.
Does money buy happiness? What's Wadaple's take on that?
Yeah, she doesn't pretend there's a simple answer, a yes or no, because it's complicated, right? She points out that money can definitely help create happiness. It can give you the freedom to pursue what you're passionate about, to build a good life for yourself, to support the things you care about.
But it's not like some kind of guarantee, right? We've all heard those stories about lottery winners who end up miserable or celebrities with tons of money going bankrupt. It happens.
It does. And Swanepoel actually uses the example of Rihanna in her book.
Oh, wow, Rihanna.
Yeah, Rihanna. So she's obviously a global superstar, right? But early in her career, she almost went completely broke. It just goes to show that even if you have a ton of money, without careful planning and a healthy money mindset, it can disappear.
Wow, that's a really good point. So how do we find that balance then? How do we enjoy what money can bring but avoid those pitfalls?
Swanepoel is really big on this idea of defining what she calls your enough. What does a truly fulfilling life look like for you personally? And how much money do you actually need to achieve that? It's about getting clear on that for yourself, because once you know, then you can start making choices about spending that line up with those values and priorities.
It's about figuring out what's truly important to you and not just buying into what everyone else says you should want.
Yes, exactly. It's about recognizing that sometimes we're buying things not because we actually value them, but because we're trying to impress other people or fill some kind of void.
There's a difference between buying that really nice chef's knife because you love to cook and buying an expensive watch just to show off.
Exactly. And the thing is, one of those things will probably bring you genuine happiness, and the other might give you a little thrill at first, but in the end, you're just out however much you spent and maybe feeling a little empty.
Okay, so let's get practical then. We've talked about mindset a lot. What are some actual steps we can take to get better at managing our money? Swanepoel seems to be a big fan of getting organized, really tracking where your money is going.
Totally. It's about understanding your cash flow. Where's it actually going? She talks about giving every single euro a job, which I love. So whether it's going towards your rent or food or into your savings account or even that vacation fund, knowing where it's going is so important.
It's funny, I've tried those budgeting apps, but I always seem to give up after a few weeks. How do you stay consistent with it? How do you actually track everything?
It's about finding what clicks for you, you know? Some people are all about those apps, but other people might prefer, a good old-fashioned spreadsheet, you know? The key is to make it a habit, even if it's just setting aside a few minutes each week to look over your transactions. Swanepoel suggests having different accounts for different things. So one for your bills, one for savings, maybe even a fun money account for those things you want to splurge on. That way you can actually see where it's all going and if you're on track to meet your goals.
Yeah, I can see how having that visual reminder could be really helpful.
Okay.
So speaking of long-term goals, let's talk about retirement. I don't know about you, but I tend to avoid thinking about it because it just seems so overwhelming.
It makes sense, right? It feels so far off. But Swanepoel has this really helpful way of framing it. She starts by dropping this truth bomb, the average pension in Belgium. It's 54% lower than your final salary. Think about that. So that comfortable lifestyle you're used to, you'll need to make up that difference somehow.
Wait, 54%? Seriously? Okay, yeah, maybe retirement planning isn't so optional after all. But where do you even begin?
Zweynepol breaks it down so it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. She talks about taking that €1,000,000 retirement number and instead of freaking out, thinking about it in smaller, more manageable chunks. It's not about finding a lump sum overnight. It's about making consistent contributions over time to build up that nest egg.
Okay, that feels a lot more doable. So what are some things people can do to start building up those retirement savings?
First off, if you have a job with an employer pension plan, take advantage of it. That employer contribution is basically free money. And then on top of that, think about things like personal savings plans. And this is a big one. Explore investing.
I was going to say investing feels intimidating, especially when you're talking about something as important as retirement.
It can. It feels complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Zweynepol is all about starting small and diversifying, which basically means spreading out your investments across different things to minimize your risk.
So, like the saying goes, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And this is key. Take a long-term view. The market's going to go up and down. It's going to fluctuate. But history shows us that over time, the stock market tends to go up. So be patient. Ride out those dips.
So maybe instead of buying the latest tech gadget, you think about putting that money towards your future self.
Now you're getting it. And honestly, there's no shame in getting help. A financial advisor can create a plan for you based on your goals, how much risk you're comfortable with, your timeline. It can be super helpful.
Okay, so we're saving wisely. But what about earning more to begin with? Zweynepol actually has some pretty good tips on negotiating a raise, which can be really scary for people.
It's true. It's all about knowing your worth and then advocating for yourself. She breaks it down into steps. First, prepare, prepare, prepare. Gather evidence of what you've achieved at work, what you contribute. Do some research, see what others in your field are making so you have a realistic idea of what to ask for, and then practice actually saying it out loud. It sounds silly, but it helps with the confidence.
It's like prepping for a big presentation. You don't just walk in and wing it. But even with all the practice in the world, those conversations can be really intimidating.
They can be, but remember, you're having a conversation, not an argument. Go in with that mindset, focus on the value you bring to the company, and don't be afraid to negotiate. You might be surprised how often just asking gets you further than you'd think.
And if the answer is no, don't let it get you down.
Right. It might not be the right time, or it might be a sign that you need to look for other opportunities that better align with your worth. Your worth isn't defined by a single no. And this is something Zweynepol is really passionate about. A raise isn't the only way to increase your income.
Exactly. Side hustles are huge now, or freelance work. You can even turn a hobby into something that makes money. There are a lot of options.
It's all about getting creative. What are your skills? What lights you up? Zweynepol actually profiles people who have successfully diversified their income, and it's not always these big, complicated businesses. One woman she talks about, she took her passion for baking and turned it into a successful online cookie business.
Now I'm craving cookies.
Yeah.
That's such a good point, though sometimes what we're passionate about can actually bring us financial rewards too.
It's like finding that sweet spot where your passions and your earning potential can coexist.
Now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about this connection between money and happiness. Zweynepol asks this really thought-provoking question in her book, what's something that genuinely made you happy recently? Was it something expensive or something much more simple?
I love that question because it forces you to really think about where you find joy, right? Was it that fancy dinner, or was it just laughing with friends and family around the table? Was it that new outfit you bought, or was it the feeling of accomplishment after finishing a creative project?
It's easy to get caught up thinking happiness is all about buying things.
It really is. But more often than not, it's those experiences, those connections we make, our personal achievements. Those are the things that truly make us happy.
So then how do we apply that thinking to our finances?
That's where Zweynepol really encourages us to be more mindful, more intentional about our spending. Instead of automatically buying that expensive vacation package, maybe you could have just as much fun on a weekend camping trip with your friends. It's about aligning your spending with what's truly important to you.
Okay, I love that. Now, she also talks about this idea of like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation when it comes to our spending. Can you explain what that means?
Of course. So intrinsic motivation, that's when you're driven by internal factors. You're buying something because it brings you joy, it fulfills a need you have, or it aligns with your values. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is all about external factors. You might be buying something to impress others, to get validation, or you're trying to fill a void with things.
So like buying a designer handbag because you genuinely love the style and the craftsmanship would be intrinsic motivation. But buying that same bag just to show off to your friends,
Right.
that would be extrinsic.
Exactly. And Zweynepal wants us to really examine those motivations before we whip out our wallets. Are you buying this thing because you truly want it, because it reflects your values, or are you just trying to keep up with some kind of external pressure that honestly probably won't make you happy in the long run?
It's about finding contentment in who you are, not what you own, right?
100%.
Okay, now I want to touch on something that can be kind of a sensitive topic, money and relationships.
Ah, yes, the intersection of love and finances. Always interesting.
Right. So Annabelle doesn't shy away from that.
She doesn't. Because it's important. Money can be a huge source of conflict in relationships, especially when couples have different habits around money, different values, and even different ways of communicating.
It's like that old saying, when poverty comes in the door, love flies out the window.
Right. But even without extreme situations like that, money issues can cause a lot of tension.
So what are some of those common pitfalls, and how can couples navigate those challenges more effectively?
Well, one big one is just having different financial priorities. Maybe one person's a saver and the other's a spender. Another is a lack of transparency, not being open with each other about money. And Zweynepal stresses how important it is to have those sometimes difficult conversations about money and to have them early on in a relationship.
So being on the same page from the get-go about financial goals, whether it's saving for a house, retirement, or even just like how you're going to manage daily expenses.
Exactly. And it's not just what you talk about, it's how you talk about it. Approach those conversations with respect. Be willing to listen and try to understand the other person's point of view. Be open to compromise. It makes a world of difference.
So it sounds like communication is key here. What about the practical side of managing money together?
Zweynepal is a big advocate for things like creating a joint budget together and then figuring out a system for dividing up the financial responsibilities in a way that feels equitable. Oh, and this is important, maintaining some level of financial independence, even within the relationship.
Right, so it's not about completely merging your finances, but finding a way to work towards those shared goals while respecting each other's needs. Makes sense.
It's about finding what works for both people.
Zweynepal doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. She even talks about financial infidelity.
Yeah, it's not often talked about, but it can be really damaging to a relationship.
So just to be clear, what does that actually look like?
It can take many forms, unfortunately. Hiding purchases from your partner, secret credit card debt, even just one person controlling all the finances and keeping the other person completely in the dark. These things erode trust and create this sense of betrayal.
It sounds like it could be really hurtful. So how can couples prevent this from happening or address it if it's already an issue in their relationship?
Honestly, it goes back to those core values: honesty, transparency, and open communication. Create a safe space for each other to talk about your worries, your habits, your goals, even if it feels uncomfortable. And look, if those conversations are too hard to have on your own, there's no shame in seeking out professional help. A financial therapist or counselor can be incredibly helpful.
So it's like couples therapy, but for your money.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit here and talk about a concept that's super important when it comes to building wealth: assets and liabilities. I'll be honest, I always thought those were kind of like financial jargon
Right.
words, but Zweynepal actually makes them make sense.
Right. It sounds complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple idea. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. Like if you own a rental property, that's an asset because you're collecting rent. Investments are assets, obviously. Even a blog or an online business that generates income, those are assets. Liabilities, on the other hand, those are things that take money out of your pocket.
So like mortgages, car payments, credit card debt, those are all liabilities.
You got it. Now, some liabilities, like a mortgage, can be considered good debt because they can help you build wealth long term, but it's still super important to be mindful of how much debt you're taking on and make a plan for paying it back strategically.
So how do you figure out if something's an asset or a liability? Like, is there an easy way to tell?
Zweynepal has this great question she asks. If I stopped working today, would this thing continue to make me money, or would it cost me money to keep?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. So that fancy sports car might be fun to drive around in, but if you lost your job, it would become a huge financial burden. That's how you know it's a liability.
It's about thinking long-term and playing the long game.
All right.
Okay, I want to talk about something else when the poll talks about financial education for kids. I love this because it feels like something that's not talked about enough.
She's a huge advocate for it. She believes you can start teaching kids about money at any age. And it's not just about the practical stuff like spending and saving. It's about teaching them those values, that mindset we were talking about earlier, so they can build healthy habits early on.
So it's not just about giving them an allowance. It's about having conversations with them about needs versus wants. Yeah.
Yes, like involving them in age-appropriate financial decisions, bringing them grocery shopping and talking about how to make choices, maybe even having them help you track household expenses or plan a family vacation. You can even make it fun by playing financial literacy games together.
You're planting those seeds early. I love that. Okay, so we've talked about a lot today, but I want to circle back to those limiting beliefs we discussed earlier. How do those negative thoughts affect our finances?
It's like having a bucket with a hole in it. You can keep pouring water in, but if you don't fix that hole, you're never going to fill it up. Those limiting beliefs are the hole in the bucket.
So what are some examples of those beliefs, and how do we start to challenge them?
Oh, there are so many. I'm just not good with money. Rich people are greedy. Money is the root of all evil. These are things we often internalize from our childhood, our culture, even past experiences. And the tricky thing is, we don't even realize they're there a lot of the time, yet they're silently sabotaging our financial progress.
Wow, so the first step is just recognizing them.
Right.
But then what? How do you actually start to dismantle those beliefs?
Awareness is huge. Once you're aware of them, you can ask yourself, is this really true? Is there evidence to support this belief? Or is it just an assumption I've been carrying around? And then you can start to replace those negative thoughts with more positive and empowering ones.
So, like, instead of thinking, I'll never be able to afford that, you'd say.
Exactly. You might say, you know what? I am worthy of financial abundance, and I'm attracting opportunities to create the life of my dreams. It might feel strange at first, but over time, you start to believe it.
So you're basically rewiring your brain.
You got it. And surrounding yourself with supportive people, people who have a healthy relationship with money, can also make a big difference. They can be your financial cheerleading squad, you know.
I love that. And on that note of positivity, Paul also talks about the importance of gratitude when it comes to money.
Yes. Gratitude is huge. It's easy to get caught up in wanting more, more, more. But pausing to appreciate what you already have, that can shift your whole perspective.
So even if you're not exactly where you want to be financially, there are still things to be grateful for: a roof over your head, food on the table, your health.
Absolutely. And expressing gratitude, even for the small things, can make a huge difference in how you feel about your finances.
It's like that saying, gratitude turns what we have into enough. So let's talk practical tips for managing your money. Paul's a big advocate for creating a budget and tracking your expenses.
It's essential. If you don't know where your money is going, it's like trying to sail a ship without a rudder. You're just lost at sea. Tracking your expenses gives you control.
We talked about budgeting apps earlier. Are there any other strategies she recommends for getting a handle on your finances?
She really likes this method called the envelope system. Have you heard of it?
I'm not sure, actually. What is it?
Okay, so basically, you take your cash and divide it up into different envelopes for different spending categories each month. So you might have an envelope for groceries, one for transportation, one for entertainment, and so on. And once the money in an envelope is gone, that's it. You can't spend any more in that category until next month.
I like that. It's such a visual way to track how much you're spending. Plus, it's a lot harder to ignore an empty envelope staring back at you than it is to ignore your bank account balance.
Exactly. And if physical cash isn't really your thing, there are a ton of apps that can do basically the same thing digitally. They categorize your transactions for you, let you set budgets and alerts, all kinds of cool stuff.
So many options. Okay, but tracking your spending is just one piece of the puzzle, right? Paul also talks about the importance of having a financial plan.
Yes, you need a roadmap for your financial journey. Whether your goal is to buy a house, retire early, start a business, or just feel financially secure, a financial plan helps get you there.
So what does a financial plan look like? What does it actually include?
Well, you start by figuring out your goals, both short-term and long-term. Then you create a budget that lines up with those goals, and you come up with a strategy for saving and investing your money to help you reach those goals.
And don't forget about those unexpected expenses.
Yes, emergencies happen. Paul says everyone needs an emergency fund. The rule of thumb is to have at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up in an account you can access quickly. That way, if you lose your job or get hit with unexpected medical bills or life throws you a curveball, you have a safety net.
It's like a financial cushion to fall back on, so
Yeah.
you're not forced to make rash decisions or go into debt when those unexpected events occur. Speaking of debt, Paul has some good insights on how to manage it. and ultimately get rid of it completely.
She really breaks down the different types of debt, that whole good debt versus bad debt thing, and she encourages people to come up with a plan for tackling their debt strategically.
Okay, so a mortgage on a rental property that's making you money could be considered good debt, but racking up a bunch of high-interest credit card debt, that's definitely bad debt, right?
Exactly. But it's not always so black and white. Even within those categories, there are nuances. Zoanapol's advice: focus on paying down your highest interest debt first. Those interest charges can snowball so quickly and make it feel almost impossible to dig yourself out.
And she also says it's so important to actually understand the terms and conditions of your loans and credit cards, things like interest rates, fees, penalties. But you know how many people skip reading the fine print?
Oh, I know. It's essential, though. And don't be afraid to negotiate with your creditors. Seriously. You might be surprised at how willing they are to work with you, maybe lower your interest rate, waive a fee, or even work out a payment plan that fits your budget.
Never hurts to ask. So Zweynepol isn't just focused on the more practical day-to-day stuff like budgeting or debt. She also delves into the world of investing. And I think she does a really great job of explaining those often intimidating concepts in a way that makes sense.
Yes, she talks about all those different investment vehicles out there, like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs, exchange-traded funds. Have you heard of those?
I've heard of them, but honestly, they're kind of a mystery to me.
It can feel really overwhelming, especially when you're first starting out. Winpole's advice is to just start small. You don't need a ton of money to begin investing, and diversification is key, remember. Spread your money around, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
So if you're brand new to investing, where do you even start?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. A financial advisor can be incredibly valuable. They can work with you to create a personalized investment strategy that aligns with your goals and your risk tolerance.
It's like having a personal trainer, but for your money.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered mindset, budgeting, debt, investing. Is there anything else?
Well, we can't forget about insurance.
Oh, right. Insurance. Not exactly the most thrilling topic, but essential nonetheless.
Right. Not very exciting, but super important for protecting yourself and your loved ones from those unexpected financial burdens life can throw at you. Zoanapol goes through all the different types: health insurance, life insurance, disability, home, auto, and helps you figure out which ones you need based on your specific situation.
There are so many different types. I imagine it can feel really overwhelming. What's her advice for those of us who feel lost in the world of insurance?
She says the first step is to assess your needs. What are you trying to protect? What financial risks are you most concerned about?
So if you're a homeowner, homeowner's insurance is a no-brainer. But if you're renting, you probably need renter's insurance instead.
Exactly. And if you have people who depend on your income, kids, a partner, anyone, life insurance is crucial. Zonapol also stresses that it's so important to shop around for the best rates because those premiums can be wildly different depending on the insurance company.
It's like buying a car you wouldn't just buy from the first dealership you see without comparing prices. It really is. It's a lot of information. I feel like we've been given this amazing financial toolkit. But you know what they say, a toolkit's not much use if it's just sitting in your garage collecting dust. What's Wenapol's advice on actually using all this knowledge to actually make a real change in our financial lives?
She's big on the idea that financial well-being isn't about reaching some finish line. It's not a destination. It's an ongoing journey. It's about those daily habits, those small choices, those regular check-ins with yourself to see what's working, what's not, and making adjustments along the way.
So no magic solutions.
Nope, sorry. It's more about shifting to this mindset of continuous learning, continuous improvement.
I can get behind that. So how do we do that? Where do we start?
Zweynepol suggests scheduling in a financial checkup every year, kind of like how you'd go to the doctor for an annual physical.
I love that idea.
Right. So once a year, you sit down, you look at your budget, see how you're doing with your goals, maybe reassess your risk tolerance, and make any tweaks that need to be made.
Because what worked for you 5 years ago might not be the best approach today, right?
Exactly. Life changes, we change, our financial needs and goals change. And listen, there's no shame in getting support along the way. A financial advisor can be such a valuable resource, whether it's helping you make sense of those complex decisions, offering advice, or just providing some encouragement on your journey.
Like having a financial cheerleader in your corner. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sarah Zweynepol's book, heden, Millionaire, Kieper, what's the most important thing you hope listeners will take away from today's conversation?
Honestly, I hope people walk away feeling empowered, like they can achieve financial well-being regardless of how much money they make or where they come from. It's not some exclusive club. It's about having the right mindset, making smart choices, and most